Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down, the greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concertsthatmadeus.com.
Hey, welcome to May's Highlights. If you missed any of the episodes throughout the month of May, then this one is just for you. It features highlights from the conversations I had with all the guests throughout the month of May. So, without further ado, let's get on with the show. Jim, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Thank you very much, Brian. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Now, I'm dying to find out your musical history and how you got to the point where you are. You're a composer, producer, you run LARP music, and you make compositions for the likes of the BBC, Universal. But there's one piece of information that sticks out at me, and I can't believe you haven't had this wiped from the internet. You were responsible for getting Crazy Frog to number one.
I can't claim 100% responsibility that, but I was certainly part of the team that, I sometimes joke because this was in a previous life when I was doing the Crazy Frog. That was when I was a marketing consultant basically, and so it was latterly that I sort of shifted into music, and I kind of joke now that everything I'm doing musically in the world is to sort of make reparations for crimes against music by helping the Crazy Frog get to number one. But that said, I also joke that the Crazy Frog prevented Coldplay from getting to number one, and in many people's eyes, that's heroic and well received. So it depends which way you look at it.
Yeah, that's a bit of a saving grace, all right. But I'm sure we'll touch on how you managed to get such a, I don't know what you could say, such a song to number one later. But we'll move on to your personal history. Can you remember your very first musical memory?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask that, because just the other week, for something that I'm doing, I had to delve into an old LP called All Aboard Children's Songs, and it's like a compilation album of loads of different songs, and there's one called The Laughing Policeman. There's Ernie, Who Drove the Fastest Milk Cart in the West, which was a song by Benny Hill.
Oh.
And it was this compilation album, and there was a song called Bum Titty Bum, which was Sophia Loren and Peter Sellers. All these kind of random songs, but those are my first musical memories of putting that LP on and listening to that. But weirdly, when you go back as well, like the Benny Hill track, Ernie, Who Drove the Fastest Milk Cart in the West, the lyrics in that song are all about the reason he drove a fast milk cart was because he was having an affair with every woman in the neighborhood, so he had to drive away really quickly. So as a kid listening to that, you today you might go, well, that's a little bit inappropriate for a kid's song, but I didn't read between the lines. It was just a cool, quirky song about a guy who drove a fast milk cart. So.
Yeah. It's definitely one of the most interesting answers I've heard so far anyway. But
Time moving faster than a BM. Gray sky swarming, I see them. Swerving and cursive, elusive, it's rather intrusive. We just keep winning now. We just keep winning now. Just wait, grind don't stop, keep on feeding this hunger. Killing everything, yeah, I feel like a monster. Homie is dead, I just bought me a shovel. Bury him daily, the new me just hustle. Flow is magnificent, we insignificant. What's the predicament? We just so militant. Spread my wings, we gon' fly. Live the legends, don't die. Let's go, let's go. Spread my wings, we gon' fly. Live the legends, don't die. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Just wait. Spread my wings, we gon' fly. Live the legends, don't die. Let's go, let's go, let's go. We don't stop, we keep pushing. Flow is magnificent, we are significant. We don't stop, we keep winning. What's the predicament? We just so militant. Seeming though it's problematic. Addicted to winning, I feel like an addict. It's just reality, ain't no one bad as me. Feel the capacity. Grind don't stop, keep on feeding this hunger. Killing everything, yeah, I feel like a monster. Homie is dead, I just bought me a shovel. Bury him daily, the new me just hustle. Push it, push it, push it. Flow is magnificent, we insignificant. Push it, push it, push it. What's the predicament? We just so militant. Push, push. Back to the basics, hard to face this. Killing everything, yeah, we leaving no traces. Evidence, they just be negligence, I mean inevitance. Rule like the presidents, we grind it's evident. We find it's evident, we just be striving. Always surviving, we just be riding. Always colliding. Spread my wings, we gon' fly. Live the legends, don't die. Spread my wings, we gon' fly. Live the legends, don't die. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Juliana, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'd love to give the listeners a sense of your musical history. Can you remember your very first musical memory?
My first musical memory was when I was 5. It's with my grandpa actually. We have a theater locally, and a lot of national acts come, but not a lot of like musicians. Like usually it'll be theater. And I specifically remember my grandpa was really excited when he came home because B.B. King was gonna be here. Like he was, and it was weird because like he's like this like national act and he's coming to our town. You know? And my grandpa was like, "Oh my God!" Like asked my mom. She was like, "Can you let me take her? I want to show her this concert." And I was like 5 at the time. I didn't know what was going on. But looking back on it, I'm so thankful because that was my first experience to music. I remember being in a crowd with people. I remember like seeing how happy my grandpa was that he got to see that. And I specifically remember that it was him just sitting with his guitar, and I was like, this is cool. I've never seen that before, because I think at the time I was just used to either seeing the pop singers, doing a bunch of dazzling performances, or bands, and it was him playing guitar, and I really enjoyed it. And now looking back, I'm just so thankful that I got to see him live. Yeah. So that's really my first musical memory, I would say.
That's possibly one of the best musical memories I've heard now. And what an introduction to concerts as well. B.B. King, Yeah, like he's on everybody's bucket list.
For sure. And I'm so thankful I got to see him live in concert. It's definitely one of the best, for sure.
Yeah. At which point then, when you were younger, did you decide, right, I want to be a musician?
It's always been, it's funny because in school, you get the yearbooks and everyone says, oh, I want to do this when I grow up. Everyone wanted to be like a doctor and, do all these jobs. And I never was connected to any of that. I always wanted to do something with the arts. And my mom, I remember she offered me piano lessons. And it's funny because I actually hated it. I didn't like it at all. I did not like it. But my mom, when she was like younger, she took piano lessons and she quit and she regretted it. I mean, till this day, she tells me she regrets. So she was like, I don't want you to feel like I felt. So I'm kind of thankful that she pushed me to do it, because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't know all the stuff that I know now. But I always wanted to do something with the arts. And I think when I found out that that people could go into music, I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And I remember every year writing in my yearbook, I want to be a musician. And everyone was like, like, okay, fine, be a musician. I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Yeah.
You think people around you, I feel like when kids and teenagers say, I want to be a musician, it's looked at as, oh yeah, this is a phase. They'll grow out of it and then they'll realize. Was that what you experienced?
Yeah, a lot of times. I was definitely that one kid that was always like, I was very open about it and I portrayed it. I made sure that, I want to be a musician. That's what I want to do. And I remember in school, like we'd have like essay writings. And like one time, I vividly remember this because it just stayed with me. We had to write an essay like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I think I was in middle school. And I wrote down everything, like I want to do this, I want to record. And they were like, who wants to share? And I was like, you know what, I'm going to share. And I just remember them being like, all right, that's how you think now. But it's like, no, I'm pretty solid about it. I gave up a lot of time for it. So it's definitely one of those things that people look at you like, oh, it's a phase. But, they see, when they get to the point that they see how much you work for it, then it's like, all right, you really do like music. You know what I mean?
Seven
Becky, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm delighted to have you. I feel like we're going to have a really interesting chat about your music now.
Thank you.
And I know I must tell the listeners that Rob will be joining us at some stage. So if they start to hear another male voice, don't get too worried. It's just Rob after joining the interview. So we'll give the listeners a sense of you with regards to music, where you came from, how you became a musician. Can you remember your earliest musical memory?
Like, that's hard to say. I've been, listening to music obviously my whole life. Listening to metal music my whole life. I started singing when I was like 10. I started taking voice lessons. So I've always been, doing music. So.
Yeah. And you mentioned you took voice lessons. I take it they were very conventional voice lessons. They weren't kind of influenced by heavy metal or stuff like that. How do you think your voice coach would feel about you being in a metal band and singing that way?
I'm classically trained, and I still I'm actually a music major, and my voice teachers they know about it, like the metal music, but I don't think they I don't know how they'd feel. I don't know how much they heard.
Rob has just joined us now as well. Rob, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
I'm delighted to have you. So I was just asking Becky, can she remember her very first musical memory?
Oh, my very first musical memory. Let's see. We're going to have to go way back there. Let's see. I think the very first musical thing that I did probably was my parents used to play a lot of classical music when I was growing up. And so I remember listening to, let's see, it was the Eine kleine Nacht music, dun, 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 from Mozart.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember listening to that as a kid and conducting the radio, basically. And that was my earliest memory.
Yeah. That's an interesting choice. So classical music, being a hard rock metal musician, how do you think the classical music kind of influenced you or led you towards metal?
Oh my gosh, I can kind of almost sum it up in one word: Yngwie.
Right.
That's all it took, really, is once I found out that that Yngwie Malmsteen was a fellow who plays pretty much everything classically, including the way he plays guitar. He plays in classical position. I do too. I found out it's actually better that way because it gives me more access to the frets, and the other position is just a little awkward for the hands, so it kind of it's not very ergonomic. But yeah, honestly, I've heard classical reference after classical reference in heavy metal music almost constantly. I can give one very obvious example and one hidden example. The very obvious example would be at the end of Necrophagist Only Ash Remains, he suddenly breaks out into Prokofiev's, I forgot, it's called The Montagues and the Capulets, and it's from Romeo and Juliet. So that's one. And then the less obvious one is, I forgot what song it is, but it's by Immortal, and he randomly throws in the Imperial March.
Right.
I forgot which one it is, but I think it's off of Battles in the North. So
I see. And growing up, was there a certain point in your lives where something or somebody influenced you and you thought to yourself, I want to be like them, I want to be a musician, this is what my life is going to be?
Well, for me, growing up, my mom loves Pat Benatar, so at a young age, she'd show me different 80s metal and rock, and I was very influenced by Pat Benatar, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great influence to have. She is one of the legends of rock music.
Yes.
I would say in my case that it was kind of interesting. I think that, after having gone to concerts and seen concerts as a kid, and when I was in elementary school, there's where I live, we have a local philharmonic. They come to the schools quite often, and they show off their instruments to the kids, and they play for us. And I even remember meeting the conductor, who sadly passed away a couple years ago. But I remember meeting him as a kid, and I think a lot of it was the fact that all of the music teachers in this particular area, they all seem kind of interconnected. So because of that community, there was a huge influence in me eventually picking up another instrument, which became my main instrument, the French horn. I picked that up in 5th grade. But early on, there was always something musical going on, in this area in particular around that time. And then in high school, that was when it got very serious, because, that was another music teacher who, even at a private school, she knew all of the local teachers in the area. So, it's just that kind of thing where everybody knows each other. And if you gravitate towards it, you kind of get pulled into the fold.
Artie and Darren, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Well, thanks for having us.
I'm delighted to have you. I've been looking forward to this one now for a while. Do you mind putting a bit of yourself into the songs? Is it kind of like therapy to kind of express yourself through the lyrics?
Oh, absolutely. The whole writing process is therapy for all of us, but when it comes to the lyrics, it definitely is a therapeutic experience, and I try to stick to things that, I could hear over and over again and not get sick of, I've lived an extraordinary life. I've had a lot of really wild experiences throughout my life, ups and downs, you name it. I've kind of been through it. I always say I kind of lived like 100 lives, and so it's very therapeutic to put down something that you've been through, because you kind of look at it differently yourself.
Yeah. And the band as a whole, I'd love to let the listeners know, how did you guys come together? What's the story behind the band?
Well, I started this in 2015 with me and a drummer, and it was I had just gotten sober. I stopped drinking and doing drugs, and I got the fire to play again. And so I'm like, I'm going to do something. So I started writing, and then I got together with the drummer, and we were just jamming on stuff and writing songs. And eventually, Kenny, or Singer, I reached out to him. I had gone out on tour with Harley Flanagan. I used to play for Harley Flanagan, the Cro-Mags. And so I got on tour with him, and Kenny was living in Arizona, and I kind of reached out to him. And eventually he moved back to New York because he wanted to do this with us. And as soon as he joined the band, Odie joined the band immediately, because I wanted Odie to play with us. And he's involved in other projects himself. And he said, I'm not really going to join something that's not ready yet, and because I played with Odie in a lot of different things growing up. I've known him my whole life. And once Kenny joined, Odie called me about 10 minutes after we posted it and said, I'm in. So that's how it's really started. And then, it didn't work out with the first drummer. We went through a few drummers, and then during the pandemic, we had to let a guy go, and we found Darren, and Darren plugged in perfectly. He's everything that we were looking for, personality wise, playing wise, attitude wise, everything. And I played with Gabby. Gabby played with me in Harley Flanagan, and he had left Harley's band, and we stayed in touch throughout the whole time. And I asked him if he wanted to be involved with this, and he jumped on it right away. And he was the only guitar player that I wanted in this band. I had some other ideas, but it just, I don't know, the way that me and Gabby work, it's a different thing. So he jumped on it, and now we have this lineup, and it's been 2 years now, strong, and we've been just plugging away and writing songs and booking shows. No matter what happened during the pandemic, we just kept going after it. So that's kind of how this whole thing came about.
And Darren, from your point of view, how did you feel the first time you heard the band?
I loved it. I mean, I'm a groove guy. Even though my background is thrash and death metal, that's what I kind of 25 years did. That was kind of my thing. But I always plugged groove into everything. My favorite band of all time is Pantera. So right then and there, that's it. You're locked in. So their groove was something that struck me immediately, and the riffs and everything about it was perfect. I had just left, like I said, my band of 24 years. We put it to bed for once and for all, and I was kind of looking for something new. I was kind of jamming with a New York hardcore band. Didn't work out, and Artie reached out to me, and I immediately got to work. Learned about 12 songs in about 9 days, and we jammed during the pandemic at his house, and everything just hit off. And he looked at me and said, "Hey, if you want the job, it's yours." And I said, "I'm in." And that was it. A couple of weeks later, we jammed with Gabby, and immediately, it felt right. Like it was the most calm, exciting, perfect feeling I've ever felt jamming in a band. And it's only gotten that much better, since day one. So it's exciting. It's been a real great 2 years, and I can't wait to see what we do moving forward.
You both touched on the pandemic there. It was such a dark period for the music worldwide, and lots of bands couldn't play. How did you guys approach it? Did you use your time wisely to perfect and write lyrics, write songs?
All work. That's all we did. We worked while every other band was like, we're not going to jam. We're not going to do this. We'll see what happens. Everything's closed down. We got to work immediately. We learned all the old songs, made sure we had them in the pocket so they were ready to go. So if anything, this ended, we were ready to go for shows. And then we started immediately working on new material, got that all worked out, went right into the studio, recorded 3 songs, and then started releasing them over the course of a year. And it was fantastic. I mean, and never lost a step. And whenever anything would come up, we'd be ready to go. And we've kind of just continued that. We just, there's some stuff that's going on personally for me right now. And even through that, we work right through it. We just don't stop. We're almost like a freight train where you can't stop us. Like we have our eye on a prize and we're shooting for it. And we're never going to stop. So the pandemic actually was good for us. It got us to really put our nose to the grindstone and get to work, and that's what we did, and it was fantastic. And I think, I maybe this is wrong of me to say, but I think if we didn't have a pandemic, I don't know if we would have had much work done, right? Because we had all this extra time. Guys were out of work, we weren't doing stuff, and we were able to just get in there and just go, and it was fantastic, and it paid off in the end. Because we recorded 3 killer songs, and then here we are, and we have 3 other songs that we had worked on and recorded. So, Weaponized being one of them. So, it was a fantastic time, definitely.
It happened once again. A conversation with myself, stranger from within, who talks in bitter tones, instrument of death, black hand of arrogance, taking stock lest I
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I for one surely did. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate and review us on iTunes. Your 5-star review will be read out on the show. And don't forget, you can now rate us on Spotify. You can find and follow us on all social media at Concerts That Made Us Podcast. And don't forget to check out the website at www.concertsthatmadeus.com. And if you'd like to support the show, you can do so by signing up at patreon.com/Concerts That Made Us. So, until next time, keep rocking. Hey, what are you guys still doing here? The show's over. It's over. You can go home. Go on. We'll see you next time. We'll be here. Bye.